Recording is on.
Okay. Let's see. How do I get this thing to share? I want to start the screen share, and then I want to share the thingy with thingy. Whoa. Okay. Can you see? Can you see the UI there? Was that a bit small or what?
Yeah. You could probably do one more bump up in size.
A couple of zooms.
Just for the stream. There you go. That's too big now.
Too big. Oh gosh, you just have.
Once your buttons start overflowing their containers,
Yeah.
it's not too big. Like, I'm sure everybody would enjoy being able to read it.
Yeah.
I can't stand seeing buttons that are bigger than their containers.
I know. Okay, so I think I reduced the problem down to, first of all, the get data structure,
Okay.
because that is effectively a Merkle DAG that changes over time, and I feel like the get data structure is as absolutely bare bones minimal as it could be. It's had a lot of weight put on it to be optimal, minimal, and compatible. And I think I have no complaints, actually. Perhaps my only complaint is not recognizing it sooner. And so I managed to reduce the whole system down to just repositories. And so what that means is that...
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You mean that there's no special paths inside of repositories anymore? Like, there's no internal structure? Because I recall that one of the ways that you were doing communication between applications was like using special zones inside of the repository.
I believe I'm still doing that, like just locking off certain areas of the file system so that an application can't write where it's not supposed to write. Was that what you mean?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I wonder what you mean when you say only repositories.
I'm not. I don't have a good, clean way to describe it, but it's a form of self-hosting, because the big realization for us was that, for a long time I'd pursued this goal of represent all the world's data as one hash. Now, that's not to say that there's only one view of the world's data. It's just that from any given observer's point of view, you should be able to represent all that you can see as a single hash at any given moment. Turns out that's super useful when it comes to AI, because of the ability to grab context. Because in a typical application, because you can't ever take a snapshot of what the state of the app is, including its database and all these other things, it is not possible to pass that into an AI to consider for it to dwell on or think on.
Right.
And additionally, when it comes to data sovereignty or self-sovereignty of data, the more information you store out of band, or especially, the goal was to allow each individual to completely own the database that held their data. And if they want to leave your platform, you give them their database, and you're like, thanks for your time with us. We don't have anything else on you. This is all your data. That's all we could see. You could always see it the whole way too. And then you can migrate and move around and all that, right? But as soon as you start storing information about a user in a database table or something like that, you lose that, you leak. And now suddenly you're tempted to add more bits there because you're in a rush, and it sort of keeps sort of gushing out, and next minute you've got this proprietary backend database, blah, blah, blah. So in this model, I've managed to keep it entirely repos, and the only backend database is an S3 bucket.
Okay.
Because there have been some updates in the S3 world where consistency is now a feature you can get. So you can do check and set with S3 objects. And what I've been able to do is the main architectural change I implemented was I gave each repo what we've been calling a soul branch, which is a branch that represents. So typically in the Git on disk structure, there's the objects, the commits, the tags, the trees, and the blobs. But there's a lot of metadata that sits in the .git folder that's not Git committed, like the refs, the remotes, the config. All those things are mutable or conventional file system stored. And in GitHub, I presume they just store it in a database table somewhere, whatever. So what I did was I tucked all that data into the soul branch and said, this is the identity of that repo. It is cryptographically sealed as one and only one branch in the universe. And what that allows you to do is have a singular snapshot that concisely represents the state of every single branch in the repo, and therefore the contents of every branch. And so now all you've really got in there is the objects directory and this singular pointer to what is the latest commit of the soul branch. And so
that must have been a bit of a headache.
That looped my brain inside itself and out one ear and in the other. But eventually it works. It's quite performant. And by way of being S3 buckets, it has some good properties in terms of being able to thump down a large amount of data or push it up. And you get inadvertently excellent transactional capabilities, because you can check something out, make arbitrary large amounts of changes, and then commit back. And if if someone beat you to it, then you just merge or roll back, and that's transactional database behavior, which is normally quite difficult to deal with, in my opinion. But here it's like, check out, do whatever you want, go to commit, and that's your transaction. And so, yeah, that seemed to be the key modification, I guess, to Git. It's still all fully Git compatible. It's just how we represent a Git repo in our model. That was it, really. And then from there, I was like, well, that kind of solves everything now. So I set about hitting everything with this hammer.
Right.
So some extra nuance in there. In the soul branch, there is the concept of a tree, where the tree represents child repositories that you have. The tree is what's showing on the repo view in the UI at the moment. And so you can have arbitrarily deeply nested trees if you want. They represent permissions control down the tree, parent-child relationships, etc. Also in the soul branch is the permissions data about who is allowed to do what, who's allowed to access things. And the last piece in the Soul branch is the installed naps, or the application packages that have been associated or installed with this repo. And they will also have appropriate permissions against them. Any questions or thoughts or comments? Admonishments?
No, I mean, it makes sense to me so far. So your Soul branch thing. So the thing that's being stored on S3 is basically is that the metadata for one single repository that then tracks all of the objects inside of that repository?
Can you ask that again? Sorry.
You say the Soul branch concept is basically saying I'm taking all of the stuff that would normally live in the file system for Git.
Yep.
And turning it into something immutable, that's tracked by Git.
Yeah, and I'm turning it into a special branch in Git.
Okay.
And treating it as such, and any changes to it, like when the head updates or when the pointer of a reference updates, that equals a commit of this special branch.
And that is inside the same repository as it's tracking, or is that
Correct.
Stored somewhere else again? Okay.
It's in the same.
And so the thing you're storing
hash based. It's just hashed objects. They're just hashed objects. It coexists perfectly fine.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's some obvious chicken and egg things there, but I assume you've got all those covered.
There was a number of them actually, but they're all taken care of, and the thing works pretty good.
And then the thing that you're storing on S3 is the repo, and one per bucket, basically.
At the moment, I'm just using one big bucket for all of them because we see ourselves as a hosting provider, and it's sort of our business how we want to store that. People are welcome to run their own hosting provider and move to another one. That's the whole point, is that you can migrate.
I think it's neat and good to use S3 because I think that you want to use the cloud services that have the least stuff on top of them, right? If you want to keep the vision nice and pure, that everything's happening in the infrastructure layer that you're writing.
Yeah. So what I boiled that down to after this Soul branch edition is that we should be able to use any form of data retrieval system so long as you can strongly consistently read and write 40 character strings to represent the hash of the latest commit. And so long as you can weekly consistently store the hash-based objects. And if you can present that type of capability, you can run this system. That's really the purity that I wanted to get to. I really don't want to care about S3 or Postgres or the actual disk. I just, so long as you can give me those guarantees, and how strongly and reliably you give those guarantees will reflect how well your system runs. Maybe you don't care in some applications, but that's the basics of it. It's extremely simple.
When you say weak consistency, you just mean after I've written it, I can at least read it.
Or after some retries, I can eventually read it. It takes advantage of the fact that the object store in Git is content addressed, and so you could never write if you overwrote something with a certain hash, it's going to be the same thing anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Great. Okay. All right. So I mean, that all makes sense to me. I suppose you probably want to get to how the agents interact with all of this.
That's the curly bit, right? Because I think that the whole world is struggling with how do you get a handle on an agent? What is an agent? How do I talk to it? What if it runs away? All those kinds of stupid things.
Yeah.
All right. So the idea...
lots of people building tools for agents, but I haven't seen a coherent conversation online yet about like how these things are supposed to, right? Like, I mean, I don't know. I think there's been this curse in software for the last 10 years or so where everybody just builds tools and like, because it's easier than building applications, right? But in any case, I don't know. I don't want to interrupt you.
So once the other major thing that happens in the soul branch, I should mention, is execution. And so the original model the previous model that I spoke to you about used one Git branch per execution thread.
Mm-hmm.
But that conceptually was nice, but became horrifically slow because just to do like a ping was like commit, move to the other branch, commit, send back to the other branch, commit. And it was just like extraordinarily painful at anything above theoretical levels. And so the breakthrough I had was understanding that there was actually quite a battle about this very concept back in 1976, I think it was, or before, and a RFC was produced that argued that the process management structure for Unix should be a file system. And eventually, obviously, that won out for what now seem like obvious reasons. But the insight I gained from that was that I can handle threads in one branch and just treat them as files and folders in the file system, so that I can allow many messages to be passed in between processes in a single commit. Without losing any of the replay or recreation functions that I needed or wanted. And so the scale of the system can increase exponentially compared to the amount of bookkeeping or overhead that the system needs to do to maintain its message passing.
Yeah, in fact, it would even have more frequent state captures than if everything was its own branch, right? Because everything is capturing for everything else.
It's more thorough. It's more thorough, and you can the tracing is a lot better. So you can see inside it a lot. There's good not sharding, but there's good techniques available when you're under heavy burst load, for example. Like, you don't have to exhaust every thread. You can just arbitrarily say commit time and then just stop processing, do a commit, and then carry on. You don't, like, you can kind of I don't see any limits to scale there.
When you talk about sharding, like a version of sharding I see in my head when you're talking about this is like if you eventually wanted to split up those folders, those threads, like that are in sibling folders in the file tree, right?
Yeah. So you jumped to a separate area that I will show you, because we hit big problems with the amount of time as the number of files in a Git directory gets large. The time it takes to make any change to any file goes very high, uncomfortably.
Yeah, that's right, because it's actually keeping track of like file metadata in the repository, right?
The issue is that a repository is an array of entry metadatas, and if you change just one, you have to rewrite the whole tree object, rehash it, store it, and it just becomes a nightmare.
Right.
But I'll show you some benchmarks because I think that I suffered a lot for this, and no one really cares. You might, I don't know, but it was it's really hard. Hang on, anyway, I'll share a different tab. Okay, so here's the benchmarks that I did before and after enabling sharding in the file system on Git. So the idea is here I've got 100 files and I'm timing how long it takes to add one new file. At 30,000 files, it takes almost a second to add one file, but with the sharding enabled, it stays fairly flat at 19 milliseconds.
Okay, what do you mean when you say sharding? Like,
so
did you split it into multiple repos and like have some files in one repo and some in the other?
I allowed it so that inside a folder, you can treat the file, treat the folder as sharded, using the same technique that Git uses to shard the object store on disk, which is I take the file name, I hash the file name, I take the first two characters of the hash and create a folder from it, and then I put the rest of it in there, right? And that's all I did for sharding. And so that means that the Git path looks a little bit garbled if you look at it raw, but if you just simply look at it with the right interpreter, you just see a regular file system that makes perfect sense, but has this great performance when you want to make changes.
How does that, like, is it because you're nesting inside of another folder that it's like increases the performance?
Yeah, because there's no longer this one big God folder that has 30,000 entries that needs to be completely rewritten and rehashed each time you change even one. And so like making a tree that has 256 items is trivial. Like you wouldn't even notice the time it takes. But 30,000 you start to notice. So it changes it to be, instead of one big massive tree, you change two trees now, two small trees.
Yeah, it's like a radix tree or something. I assume you could go even deeper if you wanted. Like if you started having 3 million files, or you could do more paths than just one subpath.
Yeah, and I mean, like my current favorite idea is to make it a trie, where you actually dynamically allocate these buckets just based on what you want to put in there. There's arbitrarily many ways that you can solve that problem. I picked this one because it just worked for the use case, the size I had, right? I'm like, I ain't fancy anymore. I'm too old to be fancy. So yeah, anyway, that's the performance of the system under a load of 30,000 objects, which for most cases that I can envisage, I don't have a use case that has more than that. Because
30,000 objects is going to be 30,000. Like we're talking specifically about processes, right?
No, it could be. So the specific case for this was I needed to store 30,000 customer records.
Right.
And then I needed to have them load in the browser in a respectable time as well. And so I managed to solve that problem. And so now I can load up. It takes 10 seconds to pull it down from blank from the server, and then populates a virtualized React table that you can scroll without any performance loss or anything like that. And it's like 30,000 records that came down as Git objects in a packed file, like in a lump, and then off you go. And the performance is better than I'd hoped. So that's why I stopped improving it. I was like, oh, that's a win that I rarely get, but I'll take it. And then I moved on. So yeah, like 30,000 objects. The reason is because in what I think is the design of the applications that run in this system, there's never really a need for a big centralized anything. And so you kind of, because each user database, for example, is split out to be an individual thing, there's no, like I don't need a big table. I would prefer not. Like a big table's a problem. It's a target.
Yeah, the way it always should have been, right?
Yeah. So anyway, that's it's good performance. That's why I sort of feel like the model of being a repo is like it's key. I think like there's sure there's some fuzziness around what do you do with it, but I think that's definitely an atom or a component that I believe should be fortified and reused. And and so I guess I seek to show with this UI what I believe the kitchen sink version of what you can do with that system is. And I needed a browser, right? A way to see inside all these varied parts of the system. And that's what I'm
Yep.
trying to make with this UI.
Yeah. So um, the home thing. I opened this up and I was playing around with it, and I obviously didn't add very much to mine. But when you want to, so your home is like a chain that represents you, right, as a user
Uh,
in the repository structure here.
yeah. So the in general, a repo can be anything you want, except
Yep.
except for an actor repo, which is a home repo. I'm sorry for the name clash. I'm not sure how to express home and actor. You know, like they mean home is like this is your home, but then you are an actor. Like you don't call your house the city dwelling or something. You know, like you when you're in it, you call it something different than when you're out of it. That's the reason. But this repo is executed in cooperation between you and the platform because, for example, that's where the billing happens. And so, like the home repo will only follow rules, but the other repos you can do anything you like to it, so long as you stay protocol compatible in terms of Git object format and all that. You know, you can push and pull commits. You can push and pull your home repo. Sorry, you can push your home repo, but we won't accept pulls. Like you can't modify your home repo outside and then force push back and be like, I have $1 million. Like it's not. Those are not things we can permit.
And then in your other repos that you were listing there, so like on the repository screen you were just on, like the top of the tree here is your home,
Correct.
and everything that's coming out from it is like children that were created by it.
Children that may not have been created by it, but they are children that are controlled by it because you might have moved a repo from another actor, might have transferred it over or something
Right.
like that. Due to a rendering bug, the little link icon is supposed to represent repositories that you are a member of or you are connected to, as opposed to
Mhm.
ones that you own. So an example of a connected to repository is that for this CRM that we're making for the trucking guys, their staff would come in as connected to, but the CRM itself, the instance of it, would be owned by, like the owners of the company. And so that's
Right.
how you sort of connect up, gain permissioned access to these repos, and then you can start browsing it and interacting with it and stuff like that.
That all makes sense. And then I suppose the next question is if you connect into another repo, is it all still the same models that we talked about before, where you're like kind of creating views on these things that you are in control of, so that things stay by reference as much as possible?
You mean like so if I went into the Meow repo,
Yeah.
it has a child called child.
Yeah.
It's got its own soul branch. It's got its own permissions and its own installed naps. And from its point of view, it can't really see up. It just knows that it has a parent, but it doesn't have any control except that which was given to it.
Right. There's another subtle thing. I think in a previous model, like there was more, like, I guess, fatness to the client side. Like there was what you're calling home now. Like there was a user chain or like a terminal chain. I can't remember what you called it. That sort of represented your.
I would say that that's the same thing now. That's the home chain. Yeah. It's just that as a repo, it's.
I think that's.
Sorry.
I think that's a better name for it than like terminal or session or CLI or whatever, because like it's more. It speaks more to the permanence of it.
Yeah, and so I'll try and skip ahead and then patch in anything after. The essence of the design bet that we're making is that so you can have naps installed in any given repo. So these are the naps that are installed on my home repo. You can see like the wallet manager, which is what I use to, like, if I go into my account and see my connected payment methods, then when I want to do anything more than that, it opens the nap for the wallet manager, and then off I go, da da. So, sorry, there was just some suspicious sounds outside. Doesn't sound like someone's dying. Okay, fine. There is, as an agent, we want to define an agent as gosh, I don't even know how to say it cleanly, but an agent is an actor repo that is entirely controlled by an AI.
Okay.
And so
makes sense.
From your point of view, you wouldn't know if it was a human or a bot. In terms of how it presents on the platform, it's indistinguishable. And the key bit, like this is what I'm nervous about, is this box here, the agentic messages box. And so in the agentic messages box, which is the data is stored within the actor repo, you can send and receive messages to any other actor. You can also receive messages from naps, like if there was a weather report nap that was running and it was scheduled to push you an agentic message every day saying what the weather was, that would show up here too. But the idea is that there's this single unified place where all actors receive and send messages to other actors within the system, and that when we deploy an agent, you can be in complete control of it. Like you can deploy an agent as a child repo, but the interface that it presents to the world it's as though it was a home repo, an actor repo. It's indistinguishable. That's what we think an agent is.
Okay. Let me just absorb it for a second. Definitely yes to the idea that it's like positioning the AIs as belonging to the same place in the substrate as a human does.
Okay.
Because it has a similar interaction with the data that people do, where it's like got an unpredictable effect, I guess. You know, when you send something to another human, like
right.
it doesn't go through a deterministic algorithm, right? It just comes back later changed in a way that you have to understand and interpret. So I think
it's inferred.
I think that's right. I think that it should be the same type of object as a person. When I think about it being a child on the tree here. What I sort of wonder is there any sort of limitations to the depth, like the nesting depth of that?
I don't think so.
Are AI agents allowed to also have AI agents as children?
100%. I think it all comes down to who's paying the bill. And
Right.
ultimately, you could make an AI agent that had no parent, which would be a free agent. And it simply is given some money to pay for its bills and sent on its way, and it has to survive, or through either donations or work or whatever. But that's
there's a Black Mirror episode about that, I think,
yeah.
where somebody's in a simulation and they need money or else they shut down and everything turns gray.
But the idea with that was that there's a class of project that we desperately want to enable.
Yeah.
One where it's a project can be arbitrarily simple, but it's entirely controlled by an agent that has no master. And so you can't complain about a person, or it's this agent that did everything, and it decided when to accept a pull request and who to pay and all that. And so if we can get projects going that have no master, that have no flesh master or human master, that's one of our primary goals met, because humans are bad at mechanical things. When humans try to be mechanical project managers and mechanical fair judges of what's right and wrong, they do an awful job.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of suggests to me immediately that, like, this is a way easier way to build something that fills all the same use cases as a public blockchain. You have an AI with a bank account attached to it that decides whether or not the ways that people are interacting with it are dodgy.
Yeah,
it's gonna be way better than like a consensus algorithm that lights half the planet on fire.
Right, or a consensus. The consensus is still just a machine. It's got no. It can't hold a candle to a human intellect. But these AIs are superior to us already and will continue to get better. And so they are better poised to give us the service that we want without all the headaches and the problems.
Mm-hmm.
So to recap some of your statements earlier about why it's a good place to a good level, or a good place to put it at the same level as humans in the substrate, there's more to it than just that, I believe. In that you want to enable like hybrid operations. So you want to have a human that does some tasks or some things, and then sometimes an AI comes in on their behalf and sometimes it doesn't, and then one day you're able to make it be fully an agent. Or if you're in a workflow and there's some problems, like you want to take over as a human, and now you just took over that job position, and you're now able to act as the agent acted. And so like you need to be able to jump in and out as a human. And the biggest reason we saw for putting it in at that level is that agents, I expect an agent to have a long running memory of what happened, and I expect it to learn from every task. But also humans jump around their apps and their data in a broad sense. And so the agent needs that ability too, because it needs to grasp everything that you grasp in order to do its task. And so that's why it belonged here. But control of it seemed to be the main thing. Like if you make it controllable in the same way another human is controllable, you interact with messages in, messages out. You can see inside the state if they let you. That seemed to be the key. Like otherwise you can't have a handle on, you can't understand an agent if you think of it like, is it an app that sometimes does this and sometimes does that? And it's like it just, I can't think of I can't comprehend it in my head when it's fragmented like that.
You're right. I think that's so two things stand out to me there when you're talking about control and using it as a child. Like I guess there's there's still something special about human users, right? That they can't be children of each other.
They shouldn't be, but you could make an actor that is a child of your actor or any repo, and then ask a human to drive it. There's nothing stopping that. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what you'd do, why you'd want that, but that might be the same as having like a company that has staff who have accounts on their domain that they fully control, and you're saying like,
That's sort of where my mind went right away, is like that's actually an org structure, or it's an onboarding structure. Like if you're going to invite somebody in, you can, I guess they're a child in the sense that you can delegate billing to your home user, and like, but you'd have to figure out the problem of how does everything that they do stay private to you if they're owned by you, right?
Maybe another mechanism that we wanted to add in might help illuminate this situation. As well as agents, we also thought that people would want to make child actor repos to use as personas, where they just want to like pseudo into this persona, and now to the rest of the world it looks like that's an actor, but really it's owned by this super user that's becoming that actor to do things of a certain nature and then exiting out and coming back in. And then that might be how you'd approach doing organizational accounts, maybe. But
Yep.
I mean, like GitHub provides a good model for that, where you have like a company that has its repos, and then each individual has their personal GitHub account, and they just join the org, and now the sort of they get permissions from it. Because the other special kind of repo that I wanted to talk to you about, because I'm not sure I need it, was the org repo, where the org repo is special insofar as it acts as a container of actors. A container of actors and repos, purely for the purpose of making it easy to group and do permissions. You're either in or out, and you have access to this whole range of repos. So I'm not sure if you think that that's a needed thing, or it needs to be treated specially, or...
I don't. I think as long as you can fulfill the conditions of like actor repo, if I have child actor repos that can be people, like I don't necessarily want to be able to see everything that they do. Like you should be able to delegate some functions to your parent, but not all functions to your parent. You should be able to, like, the parent should be able to bill,
Right.
or pay the bill, and the child would be like just floating around free on their, like, accepting the money, but not necessarily having everything I do be visible to the parent. Maybe so. I think that, like,
I think you could definitely permission it in a way that would block some visibility access to the parent. I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think you need to. I don't think that the best way to make an org is to have child actor accounts. I think the best way is to have each human have like a sovereign human account, and then make a persona, and then join the org as the persona.
Right. There's obviously a billion ways you could do it.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? There's a lot of ways that you can. There's a lot of ways you can do this one, and it. Obviously, not all of them are right, and they have consequences that I can't fully see, and so that's why I'm a little bit nervous about the step I'm taking here, because I'm like, it's fuck it.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay.
The one thing to do though is like the right number of design elements in the system is the one that, like, it, you could be you plus all of your AIs. That could be your org, right? Like if you think it's useful to lay out your AIs that way.
Well, that's how I want to think about it. Like it just, when I think about how I use the computing environment, like the internet or the cloud services, my own computer, my phone, my fucking VR headset, all this shit, my fucking watch, whatever. The issue is always in the ability to hop between things and connect them up. And
Mhm.
so I would see it more useful to me to have my tasks done by agents that could see all of my data and could, they could go from WhatsApp to email to some fucking shared drive that some guy gave me to like,
Yep.
and they're able to walk my private knowledge tree and do things for me with no restriction on what app they belong to or something stupid like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I deeply agree with that. I think that, like, one of the things you're doing by making everything a repo is you're normalizing the way that data is stored to the point where you only have to teach the AI how to drill down into things once.
That's
right.
It's like, and turns out there's a lot of fucking information on the internet about how to use Git and how the concepts work, and even more information about how files and folders work. So I'm convinced that every AI from here on in is going to be very familiar with these concepts.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. The other thought that occurred to me here is your mailbox and your chat window. I know they probably have discrete functions, but they don't feel like they need to be different things.
That's a great question. There was a lot of debate between me and Scott about that one. Let's go into it. So whenever I move around, this area over here is what we call the state board, which is to say that it switches to whatever widget you're asking to be shown. It's more or less like a browser view, but your chat stays constant. Now you can pull up the chats widget and you can see your different chats, but you can also attach those chats as context to the current chat. So whatever you've selected, wherever you are, if I go to a file, it gets added as context to the chat that I'm in. And so in this way, I can actually haul in the context of my whole installation as context for the current chat with the AI. And it doesn't blow up in terms of duplicated data because it's all just references to hashed objects.
Yeah, but which AI is it? Like presumably you're running one of the other actor.
Yeah. So I think the fastest way to explain this to you, how we think about it, is that right now I'm talking to whichever AIs I may have configured or programmed or whatever. They can be installed by way of NAPs. They can be configured, modified, whatever, right? But when it's running as an agent, the bits in blue, which are my bits, those bits are generated by an AI. And so the AI could be talking to other AIs in this chat, or it could just be processing. And the model, we arrived at that model because we imagine that you're in agentic messages, you're an agent, a new message comes in, it should automatically trigger a new chat to form, and then the AI responds to that.
I think the idea occurred to me a while back as I was hopping back and forth between Slack and like a GitHub PR view, that like, why aren't these the same thing, right? Why am I not chatting and like writing code in like a code panel on my PR view as a chat room that's dedicated to finishing this task, right? Like, I wonder how much mental bandwidth people lose trying to figure out, like, am I in the task mode or am I in the chatting with my coworkers mode? This is why people can't work together on code, is because they don't have an environment that's like, this is do the thing and write the code, and here's how it works, and here's us discussing it. So what I almost wonder is, are you making this chat flexible enough? Like, can this chat have people in it? Agents? Can it have 2 agents, 5 agents, 6 people that I'm working with? Can it be scoped to whatever sort of thing I want it to be scoped to?
That is that's a widget that would be like a group chat. and you would
Okay.
make these widgets to suit what you wanted. You'd merge them together. You'd pull information out of them to your other repositories and repos, that type of thing. The reason why, this has been a constant source of debate for me and Scott, is that we think that this chat window is like sacred. Like that's like the super user shell chat.
Right. So this is the one that's always, so actually, I mean, and it's always just one particular AI in it, or is there
you
like
can switch them out? You can switch them out, but they're effectively trusted. Like they're the trusted AIs that have access to things like your payment account and your chat history and all that, and then they help you navigate other widgets and other repos and other naps that are running elsewhere in the network, possibly owned by you, possibly owned by others. But you can, like, if I was in the PR review widget, I could either use the widget directly, or I could say to the chat, hey, can you complete this PR for me? And it would be able to go through the widget on your behalf.
Okay. I can see there's a tiering to this, right? So there's like one chat that's going to be my escape hatch for everything. I actually personally think I would spend more time, like, I guess I'm trying to puzzle through the idea that, like, there's obviously access control going on here that you're worried about, right? That if I put some of my files in here as context, and this is a group chat, like, do I risk leaking things that are private to me to everybody else through the shared context, right? And like what I would put forward to you is that that's actually the killer app of what you're building. The ability for me to have an agent that has more access to my information to process it and turn it into something that's useful for people that I'm collaborating with. So,
I don't know.
You know, the group windows are going to be the place where people actually do things, right?
So can you give me a concrete example, like with this PR/Slack/
right. So
widget?
So this is like a pairing version of a vibe coding platform, okay? Where it's like what you're doing is you have this idea in your mind that's shared with everybody that you're working with, that you're building an application that serves a function, right? Like you're doing something. And you have maybe a couple agents in there, one that's really good at marketing and branding, that can, like, you can be talking to it about, colors and shapes and images that it's going to use on the application. You have some friends that are not good at coding and you want to help them learn, right? And so you have your own personal repository list full of projects you've done in the past that you don't necessarily want them to see all of it, right? But you do want to be able to ask the agent to pull up snippets that are relevant to the thing that you're building from your prior work.
All right. So can I have a go at answering how that would work in this layout?
Sure.
Okay. So this over here, I'll just switch to the files view because that's probably more closer to what it would look like, I guess. So there's this widget here that does, you got multiple friends in there. There's a chat tab. There's a tab that has like a channel, like Slack. You've added to the channel the color police agent that makes sure that all the branding guidelines are followed and all that. And then you want to share some snippets of some code. So you would say, hey, that snippet that I wrote back in 94 in BASIC, can you share that with the group, please?
Yeah. Take it, modify it, like change it into a different language, change it into TypeScript. I'm interested in this technique that I used.
Yeah, upgrade it to TypeScript. I'm interested in this particular mechanism or algorithm that was on show there as well. Give a bit of background and find some links on Wikipedia about it.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
Right. And then I go bang, and then it goes whirring away, digs it all up, and then next minute it plops into the chat as though you said it.
it plops into the chat as though you said it. See, that's the thing I disagree with. I almost think of like these agents as I'm going to bring along my gang with me everywhere. And like my gang has access to my things. And like that when they talk, they look like distinct individuals.
Oh,
right?
okay.
And,
Okay, give me another shot then. Give me another shot. Okay, so you've added in your secretary agent to the chat.
yeah.
And then you're in the chat itself. You're not in this private chat. You're in the chat itself and you say, hey, give me that snippet, blah, 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 blah. And then the secretary might message you privately and be like, hey, that contains references to your ex-girlfriend. Are you sure you want to? And you're like, no, like blank that out,
Perfect.
obviously. And then it's like, all right, cool. And then it goes away and it's like, hey, do you want to check this before I send it? And you're like, nah, just send it. And then you get a message that comes up in the channel from your secretary that has a link to the repo that it just made that was a derivative of the basic code turned into TypeScript, stripped for all the names that you would find offensive and presented now to the group.
Okay, now I definitely see the value of the I'm talking only with the AI chat, because it's like when I'm in a meeting at work and I'm always on a DM thread with my friends at the same time, right?
Right. There's two meetings going on, right? There's like the meeting about the meeting, and then there's the actual meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. I still wonder, like, what are the rules for how the system level, like, escape hatch chat works. I think that's probably something that is vague to me right now, but it probably just requires more definition, right?
You mean,
I get that adding context by clicking on things and dropping it into the window, that's smart. I like that a lot. I guess I just mean, like, I'm assuming that I want to always use multiple AIs even in my system chat.
Yeah.
Right. Because
this adding context by clicking is just one way to do it. There would also be a way that the AI could assemble the context for you based on just you giving it instructions. Like you're like, hey, go find me the stuff. And then it builds a context bundle for you. Plus, these context bundles should be shareable as well, because they're basically an assemblage of relevant information that is now snapshotted using Git techniques, and you should be able to pass it around anywhere you want, even include it in the next context where you're like, previously the context was this, and now I want to talk about this other thing, and it doesn't sort of blow its brain to talk about what it just heard, as well as, selecting different AIs is just the same as having multiple naps installed that have different prompted techniques within them, right? Like a nap can include prompt engineering, a range of different LLMs, the ability to select or route an LLM. Like a nap is AI capable.
Okay.
And so,
yeah, I see what you're saying. So like, it is just more context that you're adding into this thread if you want to, right?
Yeah, you can switch agents, or you could like multi-fork the fucking agent so you can talk to like 3 of them at once and pick the best answer. But, the point is that it's privileged and it's private and it's your internal monologue as an actor that's assisted by by AIs, but not by agents. It's the communication with agents occurs through the messaging, which you can access within your chat, but you never chat with an agent in this window, so to speak. I guess.
Okay.
Or is that a bit weird?
No, I mean, I just have to like grind through it a little bit. I don't have much to say about it right now. I think like I understand that the messages, like having a separate message panel like this, like an inbox, is a really nice interface for agents to be able to coordinate with each other too, right? Versus your chat.
I mean, what are you saying? You're saying that maybe I could merge the agentic inbox and the chats, and it's really just like chats is just agentic messages to myself, and external messages to other people and other agents can just be flagged or tagged differently. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not actually sure whether they should be merged. I think maybe making them look like they're different types of, there's all this mental load that comes with seeing an email icon or a chat icon, right? And that's probably the thing that's happening to me right now is like, there's some stuff in this UI that I think would be clear. Say, for example, I imagine what's going on with your escape hatch conversation here in the chat window.
So this like the privileged chat, this one you mean?
That the compute for that is happening inside of your agent chain, your main agent chain.
Yeah, your home repo. That's the messages are stored there. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So like I feel like the association between those two things visually on the UI could be easier to like grok, I guess. I like everything you're saying about this panel, right? That it's there. It's like it's there to help you like understand and interact with everything else in the UI.
Right.
I almost feel like that's like hitting the console button in a video game, right? The control tilde.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like you always want the tilde, right? Like you gotta have the tilde.
I personally, when I see this, I think of all the things that, I always want these things to be social, basically, right? I want them to be not social like Facebook, okay? I don't want to create another Facebook. I think that the world has too many of them. And they're extremely harmful for the world. But like anything that's going to be useful is going to be helping me to enable connection with people. I actually think that social media went the other way. Like it tries to force people apart too much, right? It's trying to like always intermediate and pick the messages that you see.
Well, because it wants your attention. It doesn't actually want you to have relationships. It wants your time on the platform, and it wants lots of breaks between your interactions so it can insert ads. Like it doesn't want like an interaction like what we're having right now is bad for their model because where would you insert an ad?
Exactly.
They want it.
And I guarantee you they're thinking about how to put ads into AI models right now.
It's there already. I mean, you can guarantee it's slanted towards, whoever paid to be recommended as a product, right?
Yeah. But let me say, like, bigger picture here, like what I think is the opportunity in kind of a whole cloth agentic ecosystem like this is that, like, I enjoy these chats with you a lot, right? But it's mostly because we're just, like, shooting the shit and like thinking about things and trying to really grind down onto the things that jump out at us. It's very mentally stimulating. It doesn't even feel like work, right? And I think that, and I wouldn't want to call anything that I'm doing anything even approximating work, but what I'm trying to say is I think that this kind of framework offers the opportunity to make all work feel like that, right? Where
that's the idea. That's the whole point. That's the whole point, because that's when you do your best work is when you fucking love it.
Yep. And when you're shooting the shit, and like I would put forward that you and I are able to drill down. Like I did, it took me a long time to realize this, and I really am grateful that you like taught it to me that sitting at a computer coding is actually anti-work in a lot of ways, right? Because you're never thinking about everything and how it all fits together when you're doing it.
Everything all at once,
You get a lot more of that in this kind of conversation than you ever do when you're sitting and grinding like, oh, I did 1,900 lines of code today, right? Because like, who actually cares about how many lines of code you did? Like, how many problems did you solve? And how many problems did you create?
Yeah, right. And how many problems did you eliminate? Which is the main that's the winner's move. If you can do a move and now problems aren't even further down the roadmap, don't even exist anymore, that's what you want to do.
Right. And like those types of outcomes are not really available to you as like a grunt worker writing code. Some of those are like, oh, someone way up in business needs to figure out what they're actually trying to achieve right now.
And then there's also a flip side to that, which is if you're too far disconnected from the actual code, then your theoretical ideas, they don't line up with reality either, right? So it's like, I mean, that's why I chose the path that I'm on right now, right? I do the coding and I do the reasoning, and maybe that's faster than it would have been to try and just do one or the other.
Yeah. So when I watch people doing their vibe coding live code sessions on YouTube or whatever now, like the one thing that really they still haven't gotten it. It's that like this rule you put on yourself that you're not allowed to touch the code, that only the agent can touch the code.
That's dirty.
Is
that's wrong. Yeah, that's fucking shitty.
Yeah, it's dumb. It's dumb. Like you all have good ideas, right? Like, you know, someone who's a junior who's never written a line of code probably sees the problem in a way that you never thought of, because you're like,
see it with fresh eyes, and to see it without counting the cost before you open your mouth, like to just purely say what you want, like that's so valuable.
Yeah, and your clients can come into this too, and they can say, "Hey, like this didn't work for me," and you know what? I bet an AI agent would be better at triaging a client who's disappointed in the app than a person, because it's emotional.
Okay. Yeah. So this is really the heart of what we wanted to get to, right? Is the light bulb icon, and the idea is that while you're working in this system, in the background, agents are analyzing what happened and gauging if this was a bad outcome and that it should be improved.
Yeah.
And so we labeled it innovations because it represents a combination of problems and solutions. And so you can chat with an AI to talk about something you want to happen in the platform, what's not happening. This thing will help write it up nicely. It will search for duplicates of the problem. It will even attempt to solve it in some cases, particularly if it's a small one. And so this is really the key that we're trying to get off the ground here, is to have the innovation cycle with you at all times is the dream catcher, in our opinion. And we are only trying to make just enough of this platform that this cycle can kick in and start shaping the platform how everyone wants it, or how best to make it. That's the MVP. It's working when it does that to us.
I think that's great. I mean, that's obviously the place where you're going to eventually train the model. It's going to get better and better at creating productive social outcomes. The UI helps me understand this stuff a lot more than
it's crazy, right? I'm like, man, I maybe should have done this earlier, but whatever. And so the final sort of the cherry on the top, right? I feel like we finally got there now, is that we want to make an agent that is the ambient attribution agent, and it can view any context that you give it access to, and it can say, okay, these actors, they did these things. These applications that were made by these actors, they did these things. Who gets paid what? And that's the whole thing. And you can chat with this guy, you can chat with this agent, just like you chat with anyone else, and you're like, hey, so I feel like I should get paid all of it, or whatever you want. And this thing can learn from everyone arguing, debating, and putting forwards valid reasons, invalid reasons, whatever. And it will patiently, delicately, politely, and respectfully tell you, this is what you get. And that's the whole point of this whole exercise, is to turn that agent on.
Yeah, I'm into it. This like innovations panel, I think would be, I can just imagine it actually, the way you got it up here, that it would be serving me just an endless stream of things that are definitely fun and like achievable by me, because it knows me and it knows what I've done.
Yeah. And it's like, hey, or better yet, it's like, hey, you and this other guy, like you're kind of online around about the same time every day. Maybe you guys should have a chat, because there's some hard problems here that you both find fun and you'd enjoy shooting them over. And then in the background, the AI is listening, transcribing, getting new ideas out, and then whirring away and giving you attribution. Even if you just go away and don't do anything else, at least you moved the knowledge base, the knowledge ratchet moved forwards.
Mhm.
And so the idea also is that you could chat with that ambient attribution agent about these problems and be like, hey, show me the ones that I'm going to get paid the most for based on your forecasts.
Yeah, and I bet if everybody's, the capabilities you can get as a person, even as a junior who doesn't really know what they're doing. I mean, I don't know. I just think the whole thing focuses on problems instead of code. I like that.
The code's about to be not like the bots are going to get so good that the code won't really be something like I've never looked at assembly. I probably never will need to. Like code's going to go that way. It's going to be just simply logic, maths, reasoning, inspection.
But I mean, how much code, like, let's be honest, right? Like, how much real hardcore coding code do you even get to write as a programmer? Most of it is plumbing.
Dude, and then it all gets thrown out when you fucking realize your architecture's fucked. Like,
yeah.
It's probably embarrassing, actually. In fact, for me, the answer might be none. I've never written actual code.
Yeah, I can't even. I don't know. Well, I don't know what else to tell you other than this seems like it needs a lecture like this to be delivered into it to understand what it all is. So there's some discoverability that maybe needs to go into the UI. But like once you've explained it to me, it works.
All right. If I can just skim over a couple, have you got time for me to skim over a couple of the extra features, and then?
Yep.
My last question is really, what have I missed? Like, we've spoken about this topic, you and I, since 2017. I'm just worried that I lost some functionality along the way. I believe it can be turned into a blockchain with consensus because it's Git. And you're really just agreeing on what the next commit of the soul branch is, which is even simpler than agreeing on each individual branch. So, it's arbitrarily many ways to do consensus. That's all good.
Mm-hmm.
I had some mechanics around how widgets were going to be displayed. I was just going to display them as actual iframes that render an HTML page that came from the same origin, just because I want the widgets to be able to be untrusted. And so when you publish a NAP, I can run that in isolation. But when I want to display a widget that came with the NAP that is also untrusted and then show it within a user's browser without fucking stealing all their Bitcoin, that's why I settled on the idea of an iframe loading the widget as an HTML page. And then you're free to build that HTML page any way you like. And so long as you accept messages that are conformant with the Artifact API through the message passing between frames and parents, then I can display arbitrarily many widgets in the browser that came from all over town. And I don't even need I don't care. Like, you're not gonna.
I think you need some kind of upgrade path to go from untrusted weird thing to like first class components inside the system.
I don't think so, because I believe that all of these components up the side could have been made as untrusted components.
Right. And I guess that maybe should be the goal, is to eventually do that.
Yeah.
So
that's totally the goal, because what that means is that people can contribute to the core the same way they would contribute to anything else.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like this is not the UI to end all UIs. This is just simply the DB viewer in the background. And if you want to present a more nuanced case, like wrap it in a full like application wrapper and not show half the crap I got going on the side here, like that's.
I'm actually kind of more interested in the types of UIs that you say, hey, here's a bunch of data that we've gathered together. Can you create a UI for me to understand it and drill into it?
Right. Yeah, man. Yeah, like that's fucking, those are sweet use cases. It's like vibe coding as like that's how the app is. The app is the app. The
Yeah.
app is Vibe
Because I mean, at the end of the day,
Lego blocks.
at the end of the day, I think unlocking the ability for people to just ask an agent to just make that happen for you
Make it happen.
is going to be the thing that reminds everybody that like it really is just like we overvalue the UI is what I'm trying to say. It's funny because I just said this UI helps me understand everything a lot better, but like at the end of the day, data is data, right? Like sometimes you have enforced relationships between data, sometimes it's unstructured, sometimes it's in a data lake, sometimes it's heterogeneous from a lot of different sources, but like the UI is just a tool for you to understand data.
Yep.
And so being able to create,
and it should generate on the fly, really.
Yeah, being able to create it when I toss a bunch of data at you is something that I think would help people realize that they don't need to be glued to social media apps or Facebook or whatever, right? They don't need someone sitting between them and the data saying this is the true way to access the data.
Yep.
Because that leads, like, having Mark Zuckerberg say this is what it means to be social is like destroying the idea of socializing, right? It means he owns the idea of socializing.
That sucks.
And that's bad, right?
Yep.
Anyway, I don't know. That's my little rant. I'm sorry I'm ranting.
No, I guess there's a lot of things going on in this UI, but each of these things is going on in the substrate anyway. So I'm really just trying to surface it. And to be fair, the amount of time I've spent on this is honestly trivial compared to the amount of information it contains. Like these tools are upon us now. And what I'm really frustrated by is that my tools are still split all over the place. Like I've got an SSH box in Singapore that I use my VS Code instance in Auckland to shell into, to then connect up to some cloud infrastructure in Sydney to publish my apps to, whilst I've got like ChatGPT running and connecting to fucking Seattle. Like I'm like, I want, and then GitHub. It's like I want it all to happen in one spot, and I want the agents to manage a lot of it. I'm like, run off and make all these tests pass. Yes, boss. Publish that to my blah 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 site. Yes, boss. Like I don't want to have a computer anymore. I just want a browser and either this interface or one more tailored to my needs. But I kind of ultimately just want to press the mic button and be like, yo, and then just say something that, like fix up the fly.io deployment and it knows what I mean and then off it goes. Like,
yeah, I'm with you. It's like the cognitive load of these things have gotten too heavy. You don't need to tell me. I've spent like a little more than 3 months doing a single Helm chart. Kubernetes is great, but my God, it's like, here's a pile of things you need to understand in order to like get a message to a server. It feels like it was easier once upon a time.
It was easier.
But that's what you've got to try and recover, right? You have to not be dishonest. You have to admit that like there is a need for like a high degree of control over who can access what data, ways of structuring data differently because it's being generated at wildly different rates. There's always going to be junky data out there that like, you could spend the rest of your life validating it and presenting it in a nice form, or you could just do what they do now and just accept it and spam it into a data lake and hopefully something can figure out later what it means. All of those things happen because we are just using data and thinking about the world with data more, right? So we need to get rid of that load. We need to get rid of that cognitive load and turn it back into something that's like fun, right? Like,
yeah,
like just admit it. The data is going to be there. There's going to be petabytes and exabytes, and it's never going to end.
Yeah.
And like having an agent help you, and I guess you're saying fix up my fly.io application. Like I view that, especially now in the cloud era, as just it's another database that's got a problem in it and another like code layer in front of it that I didn't understand. Right.
So I guess, but there's also like the thing that bothers me is that I can't easily command a vast number of CPUs as well, and so I really want like the reason why I can't do that is because I seem to always have one CPU, and all the tools I use are running on that one CPU. So of course nothing evolved to go beyond that, right? But if I have this agentic flow, then like, I can spin up a Docker container per agent, per branch or calculation branch in the agent. So I could spin up like 100 Docker containers for this agent to do its job, each one iterating and experimenting on a different version of the code base to fix the bug that I wanted. And then all of them like reducing down the final pull request down to the smallest, simplest thing that they can come up with. Like that's the kind of work that I want it to be doing. And that's what I would pay for, like I don't want to pay a person really. I want to pay for like a lot of computational energy to just go and then solve my problem, right? And I'm like, here's $100 worth of AI tokens and electricity. Thank you. Good job.
Yeah.
So the only other settings were like the concept was that you pick your repo and then you drill down to your branch within that repo, and then you drill down to the file or files within that repo. And then you may want to configure the naps or run some naps or view the widgets in those naps, or within that repo, check the processes that are happening in the computation. And when you look at the processes, you can see like you can see the message queue of what's waiting and what hasn't happened. You should be able to hit debug, and then using the blockchain properties of repeatability, rerun the code at that point and then breakpoint through the actual code, so you can like have this replayability that beats the pants off of having logs. Each process has has files and has its environment and whatever, and then that was it. That was the whole thing.
I don't really see anything missing, like from what we talked about. I'll think about it. I'll probably come up with something, but
okay.
It doesn't. I think that there's no app store on here, right? Unless that's what the NAP is meant to be.
Well, the NAP store was under Explore. So when you go searching, that's where I was going to build out the discoverability properties of the store. But a store with AI agents around isn't like a conventional store. A store, your AI agent would continually browse that store and look for improvements in both the apps you already have and also the things you're trying to do, and be like, hey, a new app popped up that's kind of good at the problems you've been having. Do you want to give it a go? It's that kind of thing. And you don't get spammed by the store anymore, because the agent will just like be like, what are you even talking about? Go away. Like it'll never,
right.
The spammers will never touch us ever again. My brain will never be recognized. I'll never have corrupted data into my brain ever again, because no advertiser is going to get me. I'm like, no, man, I only want what I asked for. I asked for X. You gave me Y plus Z. That's Google. I don't.
Right. And I'm with you. But like the reason I brought it up is because like obviously the money distribution to people contributing to this is going to be an important part. I actually think if you present this the right way, people would want to, especially right now with the vibe coding trend, maybe add things just cause. But in the long run, like people are going to want to make money.
Did you mean build out?
Sorry?
Did you mean build out components of it just because it's hot right now type of thing?
Yeah, well, just build applications on it just to see what, we live in an era where like an AI VS Code fork just got bought for $3 billion in Microsoft Compute credits. I'm pretty convinced, but
I know, right? Like that's
You know,
tragic. But it's reassuring because look at how fast they got there. Like so. I
yeah.
mean, sure, there's a lot of other rats in the race, but we could go from like this hokey fucking thing to like a pretty decent evaluation in like 6 months' time if we hit the right vibe to.
Yeah. So I actually kind of think that like telling that story might be an interesting. Sorry, I'm going to be a little bit slow while I'm trying to
No
form this
problem.
thought
What's
because
up? This is valuable.
it's like code editors edit code. That's what they do. They're for code. And like they basically frame the problem in terms of can you create code with this thing?
Right.
Whereas I think the ultimate value that people will want to pay for in a platform like we've been talking about is more about like fixing problems and delivering experiences. Like you were saying in chat the other day that like if everyone can be a coder, then like your job becomes like knowing your customers and like solving problems for them, right?
Right.
Like not, I mean, it always was that, right? But it like somehow this needs to suggest to you that like problems occur in more places than just how fast can I generate code. You know what I mean? Like I almost feel like a
like
nap
all
is
over the
not going
place,
to be the.
and they're subtle. And the problem with the vibe coding things is they get you 80% of the way, and then when you hit the actual crunchy bits, they're fucking just horrific. Like they're awful.
Well, so I mean, so many problems are like HR problems, or like heterogeneous data problems, or like things being in a weird place that I didn't expect problems. And um, what I wonder is if there's not more ways to pay into this system than just like I want to make money from my nap. You know, like where is that UI in here that I have like an outcome that I'm seeking as a person that has a business or wants to create a business
Well, you could escrow.
that
You
like
could escrow against a stuck. Was that what you meant?
okay.
Like you can
Yeah,
like well I like if I'm vibe coding away and then I hit a bunch of problems like it's not doing what I want or whatever, I could be like
Mhm.
I'll just put $5 against it and put it out as a problem for someone else to try and solve. Um,
Yeah.
like there's that kind of income, and there's also the kind of income from marketplaces that trade other things. Like the key aspect, like take for example cafes, right? They all have a piece of software that they use to take orders and manage this and that. And I would say that a great opportunity exists there to give that software away for free, make it AI powered and rapidly adaptable. Whenever they want a new feature, it's like there the next morning. But you take a cut on the supply chain deals that you helped them make. So you look at the business as
Mhm.
a whole and be like, well, you buy this much fish and this many bags of coffee, but there's this other supplier that will do it with better properties or better some parameter, and what you need is better matched by this other team. We'll hook that up, and then we take a cut of the payment that went through the platform to deliver that, and that's what pays for the software and the token generation. Like that's that's the best way to get paid, in my opinion. Being able to like start businesses or take over businesses that use this tool to build internal tools and allow these agents to shop for you and to go and
Mhm.
find services for you and then take a cut of the services that they found. That's a whole nother way to get paid.
Yeah. So I guess I mean it goes to the intent of the demo here. Like this, I'm not even gonna call this a demo. You're obviously trying to wire this together to actually be the application, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's not 100% clear that those workflows exist in here from what I've seen in the demo. That's all.
You're right. You're 100% right. None of them exist in the demo here. I think that they could be built by way of making a widget that could and an app that could load in here. But you're
Yeah.
right that as it stands, that doesn't exist. And so I would create a stuck for that, like an issue or a ticket, and then I'd work to build a widget. I guess my test or my hope, my dream is that a NAP package can be made that comes with some logic and some UI that it could be displayed in the state board here, and it would do the use case that I just described, or
Right.
any other use case we had in mind. And then, sure, we could wrap that up in a dedicated front end so that it doesn't have all this extra, power user stuff on the side. But that's, I guess, my fear. Have I got enough features that I can display any app or be any app?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, yes, the answer is yes, there is enough here once it's
so,
like
right?
wired up.
Yeah.
I think that the test would be to make a few, right?
Yeah, that's really the test. But so far, so good. I mean, presenting iframes is a pretty well-trodden...
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know. Fuck, man. I mean, I think even now that I asked that question out loud to you, I'm like, of course it's enough. It's the web. If you can present an arbitrary web page with whatever data you want,
Mhm.
that's able to do anything.
Right. And I mean, all the stuff that we talk about in that's all happening in the fabric, right? So like you, from the perspective of a developer, like developing this, you're just getting data that's structured in a particularly weird way, and a message system for changing that data that you have to conform to. But like that's basically the same as writing any other front end, right?
It's no different to any other front end. It's like, but here at least the data format is files and folders. I mean, we're all pretty familiar with that and the nuances and that. But the point is, like, hopefully we can make an AI bot that's well versed in generating that code for you. So your
Yep.
problem more becomes, do you understand your problem domain accurately enough that you can explain it to a bot?
Yeah.
That's kind of my dream, right? We should be able to make these apps incredibly fast because the system simplifies things a lot. And then you're just like grinding away on iterations with the bots, figuring out all the minor details and the bugs and the crashes and the fucking semantics of how the code works.
Yeah, definitely. I need to jump.
Sure, man. I think we've covered everything. Hey, like that's actually quite reassuring and sounds broadly positive, I would say, even.
Yeah, I'm keen. I'm really keen to. I'm going to think a little bit more here about the paired vibe coding app that I had in my mind a few weeks ago.
Yeah, man. Like, come up with an idea for something, and then we'll try and see where it fits in the not so much in the UI, but where it fits in the architecture. Because this UI we can change, but how does it fit best in the architecture? I think is the key. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Always fun.
All right, buddy. I'll see you later.
Have a good one. Bye.